All right. Happy Friday. Welcome, welcome, welcome to all of you that are in the audience. Excited to have you and excited to talk all about quiet quitting with my amazing guest, Shiva. So excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. So, just to get started, just want to thank everyone once again for joining me today. You honestly could be anywhere, but you're here. So, thank you. And I really just want to make sure that this is a conversation where we have an opportunity to connect and, of course, share. So, please feel free to raise your hand at any point in time if you want to join us on stage. I want to really make sure that this is super engaging and that everyone has an opportunity to contribute if that's something they want to do. All right. I'll just do a quick introduction and then I'll have Shiva introduce herself. So a quick introduction. Hello, hi. Those who don't know me, my name is Ikria. I also respond to Aqua and Akua. I'm a certified executive coach. I also do learning and development facilitation and speaking, and I have my own podcast called the Open Doors Conversations Podcast. All right. So I'd love for Shiva to quickly introduce herself, and then we'll get into the topic.
Thank you for that, hun. I have no idea how to introduce myself. I suck at this.
I love all the titles you gave me, though. I mean, I can share some of those.
Please do, because I already forgot what I gave you.
Okay, so those of you who are listening to this, Shiva is a deprogrammer, all right, who is obsessed with ancestral leadership, liberation, cultural intelligence, and she also is a leadership myth buster who is focused on organizational justice. Long story short, she is a badass. And I guess that was one thing I was going to also mention. I didn't put that in here, but there may be some cussing or cursing in this conversation. So just a warning. All right, warning everyone.
I'm a New Yorker at heart. I'm Iranian, Muslim, Jewish, but I was raised in New York City, and just can't take that out of me.
Love it. Is there anything that people should know about you before we get started?
A lot of my work is, so especially in relation to this conversation, I mean, I've had 9-to-5 jobs myself, but for the past 5-6 years, I've been working for myself, which is interesting because it gives me, when all your money is not tied into, your survival is not tied into one organization, you can question things that you previously were maybe afraid to question. And I can push back on clients and organizational culture in a way that I was not able to do when I was working in companies. So I think that's kind of important to know about for this conversation.
I love that. I think that's really important, for people to have that perspective. And I would say something similar for me as well. And as we answer questions and we share our perspective, I think it's important to recognize that both of us do work for ourselves primarily. All right. So let's get into some of these questions we have. I have looking at them and excited to share these with you, Shiva. And then once again, all of you who are joining us, please feel free also to raise your hand if there's something that you want to share, if there's a perspective you think would be helpful for everyone to hear. But let's start off by actually defining quiet quitting. And there's some really interesting stats when you start to Google it, right? I saw someplace that Gallup poll found that 50% of the US workforce is quiet quitting. And when I actually started reading about quiet quitting, I felt that a lot of the people I had worked with in West Africa, so I'm based in Accra, Ghana, so I've worked primarily between, physically, primarily between Ghana and Nigeria. And I felt like I could definitely see this concept of quiet quitting already being something that I saw when I first came back in like 2012. So Shiva, what is your definition of quiet quitting? And then I'd love to open it up to the audience.
Sure. For me, it's looking at your job description and saying, that's what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to go above and beyond. Simple as that. And also, it's, I think, possibly founded in this radical concept that your job does not have to be your identity and that you can work to live instead of live to work.
Yeah. All right. For those of you listening, let us know. Do you work to live? Just maybe with an emoji, you can react. Do you work to live? So let us know if an emoji, do you work to live? Because I'm curious how people feel about it. All right. I see some smileys. Do you work to live? Share a reaction. All right. So I see one smiling. I see a thumbs up. Thank you for that. All right. I see a heart. Thank you, Kim, for the thumbs up. Okay. All right. Lexi. Okay. All right. So people are listening. People. Okay. So there's a few people who work to live. Okay. Great. Thank you so much for that, Shiva. Does anyone else have another definition or another perspective they want to share around quiet quitting they think is important for us to keep in mind? Please raise your hand. All right. Well, I mean, I think from my perspective, I think Shiva, now that I work for myself, I think my definition is quite closely related to yours. I think that there's a really interesting thing I see when I'm supporting leaders, especially when I'm supporting founders, around this idea that people are meant to go above and beyond what's in their job description. And that's actually what makes a good employee. Or I guess even that's sort of the status quo. It's going above and beyond what's in your job description. And I think it's important for all of us to reflect on whether or not that's really where we should be spending our time and energy, right? Or if everything is meant to come from our jobs. I actually did a poll a few days ago where I was asking, should we find purpose, or should there be purpose in our 9 to 5? And I was quite surprised. The last time I looked at it, the majority of people said yes. Yeah.
I mean, it definitely makes life easier, right? It absolutely, it makes it less of a torture to go do your job if you find purpose in it. And for me, it is also important, to be perfectly honest. I started to work for myself because I couldn't find purpose in the jobs I was doing in organizations. So I do believe, for myself at least, that if I'm going to spend all of this time and energy in something, I want it to mean something. I want it to have value to society at large and also to myself. But I don't want my entire purpose to be tied in to what I do, right? And I don't think it has to be. And when I look at leadership literature in the past 15, 20 years, it's been so many of these quote unquote gurus talking about finding purpose in your work. And part of me realizes, or I started to realize, that, I mean, at least everywhere I've worked, leaders really latched onto this idea, but in a way to exploit, right? For the end means of, like, if we find purpose in our work, this is a great way to get people to do work for free, to work extra hours for those extra cookies. And then you get a bonus at the end. And that bonus is really just getting paid for the work that you'd already put in, right? And I mean, kind of going off topic there, but I understand the need to find purpose in your work, but I want to understand and start exploring, what the fuck is my purpose outside of work? Like, who am I as a complete 360, 3D human being? Does my purpose, can it not be tied into my family, to my community, to my friends, to my ancestors, to what I'm leaving to my descendants, right? And I don't mean just the people I birthed, but I mean my mentors, the people around me, those who come after me. So for me, that's much greater than just a purpose at work.
You can't see me, but I am nodding my head. I feel like a lot of what you shared really resonates with me. And I think it's very interesting, right? That, like, as you mentioned, a lot of literature, a lot of best practices is around trying to help individuals sort of articulate their purpose, or how their work even allows them to live their purpose in some way. And I think it's very interesting, especially as you start looking in, the nonprofit space. Yeah, especially, right? Even with this concept of burnout, right? And how, finding meaning in what you do is also an element of burnout. So if you don't have that meaning, it's a lot easier for you to not be as engaged, a lot easier for you to potentially even burn out. But I think that that's a really great point.
In entrepreneurship as well, it's used a lot. I mean, follow your purpose and make money off of your purpose. And yes, that sounds great. But what it does is just, and I see this all around me, and I see it myself as well. When I first started my own business, it was that concept of, finally I get to do what I really want. And I worked, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. How the fuck is that healthy? Right? So it's like, we kind of use these terms and misuse these terms and abuse these terms without pausing to really think, is this healthy? Right? How can I make this mean something to me that still allows me to live my life and not just have my entire life be my work. And then I think about, God, I look at folks who retire, I look at my parents. The second they stopped working, they lost all meaning to their life. Like they have no idea what to do with themselves now. They have no hobbies. And like my dad is constantly telling me, get a hobby, like get something else that you love and enjoy that is not work. Because when that's gone, you feel like you've got nothing, right?
I love that. Yeah,
And
and I agree. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Shiva.
no, I was just going to verbal vomit more, so I'll stop there.
You're allowed to. That's the entire point of this conversation. Once again, just want to do a call out to the audience. Does anyone want to share their perspective? Anyone else want to join us on stage to talk about maybe their own experience with recognizing that it was maybe time to create space for things outside of what they got paid to do? I saw Melanie had a thumbs up for what you shared, Shiva. Thank you so much, Melanie, for those reactions. Anyone else want to share their perspective? Feel free to raise your hand at any point and I'll have you on stage. Shiva, my next question I had, in addition to, what is quiet quitting? I'm curious on your perspective. Do you think that looks the same in all cultures, all countries, all economies?
I think it's a few things. So when I first moved to Spain, so just a little bit background, I'm an Iranian, was a refugee in Italy, and then I grew up in New York from age of 5 until about 18. And then about 15 years ago, I moved to Spain. And I remember being like so much in my US mentality, so much in that competitive purpose, hustle mentality. It was a freaking culture shock when I came here because like what we consider quiet quitting was just the way of being here.
Yeah.
Right. It was very clear that your work is a means to an end. It is a way to get money so that you can do the things that you love outside. And all of the folks I interacted with had stuff outside of work that they did. And I was amazed by this. I was like, what? You go hiking on the weekends? Oh, you go to yoga class 3 times a week? You learn a different language as well. What is all of this stuff that you're doing? And it's not for your work. It's purely for the joy of it. I just did not get that concept, right? So I think yes, in different cultures, it is going to look differently. It could just be how their culture is. And that's why I also think the term quiet quitting is kind of messed up. Like it's very US centered, I think, the term itself. It's quiet quitting based on US standards and ideals of what your life and values should be to begin with. At the same time, because of US cultural imperialism, I'm seeing it here. I'm seeing the culture shift in Spain. I'm seeing a lot of folks, wanting to move to the United States, wanting to replicate and have those standards and being frustrated at Spanish culture. And I get it. Some things can become stagnant if we're just showing up and doing the bare minimum. So there's pros and cons to everything, let's be honest. But I see that's starting to shift and people going to the opposite end of like working those 12-hour days, not leaving the office, working on the weekends, always being on call, not having any boundaries, sending emails at evenings and expecting people to jump at them, and slowly losing a bit of their personal lives. That makes me very sad, but I think this quiet quitting concept is very US centered. And at the end of the day, many different cultures just have a different way of being.
Yeah.
Where work is not it's not the only thing in life.
Yeah, I think well said, right? And like you said, what is that frame of reference that we're using? And I think it's very interesting to see other people in other places talk about quiet quitting. And as I sort of alluded to early on, my perspective of what work should look like, right? And once again, I don't know if it's, is it right? Is it wrong? Like, do we have to go to work from 9 to 5 even? Like, who decided that? Who said that that was a good time to even do work?
Yes. It's like, seriously, do we even need to work 5 days a week? Like a lot of this shit just seems arbitrary, arbitrary and outdated, right? Maybe in the past it was necessary, but like, and most of the time we don't see that much ourselves. Again, sorry, I'm going on these tangents.
No,
My mind,
this is what this is all
my
about.
mind is a mind
Keep
map.
going. Keep going.
It's exploitation. That's how I see it, right? I see it really grounded in exploitation, and a lot of it unintentional. And I've been there too. I was definitely that leader who wanted my team to go above and beyond. Um, it's very easy to get sucked into that, especially when you've got the pressure, especially when your ability to care for yourself and pay your bills comes from one paycheck, from one organization. And when you are in a leadership, you have all of this weight and power. And most folks don't want all that weight, by the way. They want the power, but they don't want the responsibility that goes with it. And, it's to produce, it's to meet targets, again, only for a small percentage of people to really gain wealth from all of this work. But we get so sucked into that day to day that we really forget that we're allowed to put boundaries. We forget that we're allowed to say no. We forget that quantity alone is not going to save us. Quantity is harming us. And also, and I remind the leaders I work with all the fucking time about this, 99% of us do not work in jobs that save lives.
Yes.
We do not. The work I do does not save lives, right? It just doesn't. Why are we acting as if the world is going to come crashing down if we do not go above and beyond when our work is not freaking saving lives? And most of the time, we're just creating products and services that make people's lives maybe a little bit easier. And a lot of the stuff that we're working on, we don't actually need. Society does not need. So again, why am I going out of my way? Why am I sacrificing my body, my emotions, my time with my family and friends and with myself for a product and a service that the world frankly does not need and is not saving lives?
Yep. I see a lot of people had their thumbs up, lots of reactions to what you're sharing, Shiva. I think a lot of what you're sharing really, really resonates. And I think, from my perspective, as someone, I've known you now maybe for about two, almost 3 years. I think that you're someone who has amazing, amazing boundaries. Can you share some of the things that have shifted and even how you've shown up, even over the last 2 years within your business? Because I know there's some things that you've changed around how much you work, when you answer emails. And I think it'd be really interesting to sort of even share with others, even if you don't work for yourself, right? So Shiva is someone who's worked for herself for a while. She's even shifted her boundaries within working for herself as well.
Yeah. Well, I realized I was my own worst enemy. And I realized that I was, and a lot of entrepreneurs do this. We leave our organizations and organizations in general because of the culture and ways of working, but then we just replicate those same ways of working in our business. And I was definitely doing that. And I got to a point where I was just so down and why the fuck am I working for myself if I can't enjoy any of the benefits of having this independence and interdependence? And so I made some changes. I think the one thing that a lot of people connected with and still connect with is I have a permanent out of office email.
Yes.
So every time you write to me, you will get a message that says, "Hello, human." And I don't remember the exact wording, but it's just this, this little thing about I'm trying to be more human and trying not to be a robot. And the purpose of it is quality over quantity. It's impact over just doing all the things. And what that looks like is a 4-day week. So I work Monday through Thursday. Today, for example, Friday, I went to the gym. I went to the spa. I spent 2 hours in a cafe journaling. I'm here with you now. I've got dinner after this. So I work Monday through Thursday, and I work from 10 in the morning until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And that also means that I don't answer emails and I don't take meetings and I don't do work outside of those times. And that the purpose of it is quality for all of us. And the amount of people who have responded to that is phenomenal. And these are senior leaders, these are middle managers, these are up and down the scale and across the scale in our organizations. And it's something that felt really, really big at the time when I did it. I'm like, holy shit, can I do this? Mind you, I work for myself. Of course I can do this, right? I decide this. But it was terrifying because of all that programming of am I going to be seen as lazy? Am I going to be seen as weak? Are they going to go to another provider? But interesting enough, no, really, no. Most folks will respect those boundaries. And even if they'll write me on a Friday, they'll be like, so I know you don't work on Fridays and I don't expect you to respond to this or see this until next week. And they'll call me out. If one day I do check my email and I respond, they're like, Shiva, you're pushing back against your boundaries. That's not okay. Like, oh, all right. So that one thing that felt big and actually is very small has made a massive impact in my life.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Shiva, for sharing that. And maybe just the last bit from what I remember, I think we also once had a conversation about sort of your thoughts on taking time off. Can you share a little bit more about that as well? Because I think it's really great just to hear what other people are doing.
Yes. So what I started to do was, because I also, transparency, I in my life, I just started to take holidays like a few years ago. I did not understand the concept before that. Growing up, we didn't have the money for holidays, but even when I did, I was freaking working all the time. Like I felt like the world is going to come down if I'm not working. How can I possibly take a holiday? So this past year, I only worked 9 months. I've taken 3 months of holiday, 2 months in the summer, and then months just kind of sporadically around there. And what I'll do is also I will go through my calendar at the beginning of the year, and I will mark off the times when I want to take off. And I'm very kind of strategic about it in the sense of I know my body at this point. I know that like by the end of February, beginning of March, I'm going to go nuts. I cannot, like, I need to get the hell out. So booking 4 days to go into the mountains. I know that during the Persian New Year, which is the middle of March, end of March, very important for me to take that time off. So I booked that in as well. This is something I learned from Spain, by the way. Like when I first got here, everyone had already had their holidays planned out for a year. And I'm like, wow, this is a whole other way of being I did not think about. So, I spend time, creating my social media strategy, creating strategy for the business. Why the hell am I not going to do some strategy from living my actual life? The amount in time. And I think that's part of that holiday thing of I was spending 90% of my energy on work and only 10% on my life. And now I'm like, nope, it's got to be at least 50-50. So 50% of my energy is going to be on how do I make my business work, and 50% of my energy is going to be on how do I bring joy and life and vitality and energy into my day-to-day, into my year.
Yes.
And travel's a major part for me for that.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a weekend away.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Right. So knowing yourself, knowing your body, knowing when you might need some additional rest and space to restore yourself. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right. So it looks like we've had 2 people that were able to join us on stage. So we had Phyllis first. Phyllis, hopefully I'm saying that correctly. What did you want to share, or did you have a question? Hi.
Excellent. I joined the conversation a little late, but I feel like I came in at the right time. Thank you for those very insightful and rather affirming ways in which you are resting and restoring and rejuvenating yourself. Shiva, I believe it is. Correct me if I'm not pronouncing. So, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So I wanted to ask the question about, you made a comment there. It might have been a subliminal comment. Shit, if I were to take this time off, would people think that I'm lazy? And that's, you know what I mean? And that's what I want to tease out, because as a woman who identifies, I am a person of African descent and living and working in Canada, there are certain stereotypes and certain, you know what I mean, memes that people have about people who look like me, people who are of indigenous background and so on. We are lazy, they say. And so when someone like me, and I've been doing what you've been doing for years, it's crazy how wonderful that process is, because I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm taking care of myself. But nonetheless, you do get judged. And how does one navigate that? Especially someone, I'm pretty old in what I'm doing now, so the confidence is there. But what about someone that's younger and really would like to factor in that care, but also grappling with these societal stereotypes?
Oh, absolutely. So a couple of things. One, I've got a shit ton of privilege here in Spain because they see me as white. So I do not get nearly as much pushback as I would if I were in the United States where I'm seen as brown. And two, I think, so navigating the prejudices, in my experience, I mean, I can't stop people from judging me, right? I wish I could. I've tried to prove myself as the perfect Middle Eastern Muslim woman, and it just doesn't work, right? So more than anything, I think if I were younger, speaking to my younger self in that sense, I wish I had, one, founded other people like myself who were living the kind of life that I wanted, seeing that it is possible, right? So, someone around you, Phyllis, I hope that they come to you and realize that you're living your life on your terms and you're making space and time for rejuvenation and rest. So one example is that it can happen, right? That you can also still get your work done. Understanding systemically why we have those stereotypes placed on us, that it is not about us. Mm-hmm. It is about the other. It is about their biases, their fears, their privileges. And it will impact you, right? So I can't say that it won't, because it will. But at the same time, deciding for ourselves, all right, am I going to live my life because of how other people are going to be judging me? Or am I going to live my life in a way that is the best for myself? Because they're still going to judge no matter what. So it's kind of a half answer, but I think find role models, find other people who live that life. I didn't have that. I lived in an immigrant community, and Middle Eastern immigrants, doctor, lawyer, engineer, you have to work your ass off. You have to make a shit ton of money. Like we basically want to cozy up to whiteness in a lot of ways as well. So there wasn't any of that. It was only when I left that context that I had people around me who I saw were living the kind of life that I wanted. And I think had that kind of role model before, it would have made it so much easier to just know that it's possible, right? Mm-hmm. And there's going to be pushback and there's going to be backlash, but there will be other opportunities. The opportunities don't necessarily go away. They are limited depending on our identities, but they're not going to go away.
Estoy de acuerdo. Mucho gracias.
¿Hablas
español?
Sí, hablo español. Muchas gracias por la pregunta.
Muy bien. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And very, very insightful. And you're absolutely right. It's the role models. And we do need the role models. We need those to mentor us and help us. Because there are times when, even on my own journey, I would get back into the workforce and just go full force. And it's like I'm burning myself out, not spending time with my children. And it's just waffling back and forth until I decided, you know what, that's it. This is just how I'm going to do it. I literally just came in from a nice long walk. I haven't started officially working yet. Nice. And then I saw this, I'm going to hop into this. I've already done the meditation, the journaling, and I'm charged for the day. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate this.
Absolutely. Thank you, Phyllis. And one other thing with that is when we're role modeling, part of it for me is if you feel comfortable enough, make yourself visible in that, right? I scream it from the rooftops. I'm constantly on LinkedIn telling people about this. Putting that out of office email was a way of being visible as well. Hey, folks, there's another way possible, instead of just keeping it to myself.
Oh my, what an amazing point, because for years I hid it. For years. I literally just started sharing a little. And yesterday I actually shared, I have a process, and if anyone's interested, feel free to use it. It's a formula that I use for journaling, and I've taught it in workshops, but I've never made it public, just, on LinkedIn and so on. And it's the acronym is GREIS, GREIS. And when I come out of meditation, that's when I start my journaling. And the G is gratitude. So I just send some amazing energies out to myself and to others based on what I'm grateful for. The R is what I want to release. So I identify whether it's a thought, behavior, whatever.
Mhm.
I'm going to release it. The E is what I want to embrace. And again, I identify that and I write it down. And the I is intention. And everything I do comes from a place of intention. And it's how I like to start my days, end my days. So I set my intentions for the day. And then the S is to seal it, because you don't want to leave a beautiful work open to be derailed. And so I use certain sayings from different traditions and practices. And one of them that's my favorite is Sat Nam or Set Nam. I believe it's a Hindu, maybe a Sikh word that means truth is my identity. So that's the formula that I've been using. And notice I'm sharing this. Before I would never say anything publicly. So
Well,
thank
thank
you for
you.
saying.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for that amazing question. Yes. All right. So I see there is another wonderful human with us on stage. Melanie, glad that you could make it. Do you have a question or something you wanted to get?
Yes, hola. Hello, everyone. I'm Melanie. Thank you very much for allowing me to ask my question. Also, Phyllis, I wanted to thank you for the question you just asked, because that was also a point that I had on my pipeline. So, Shiva, I have to ask you, when we talk about boundaries, we also need to implement it with time management. And a lot of people around me keep telling me, I have to educate, let's say like this, my clients to show them when I'm available and when I'm not. But basically, it's also the point that I have to educate myself. It's like with dogs, not only educate the dog, train a dog, but also train the trainer, like the owner. I have the big problem that I get anxious when I feel that I can actually lose out on something.
Yes.
So I always go back to just quickly check my emails, because I have to always, let's say, send out many things out, and I'm depending on responses. So in order for me to process and think how I'm going to react and actually implement the solution, I'm waiting for their responses. So I cannot resist. And that is exactly my problem, because I'm not able to stop and to really pause and focus on my life. And so I continue working even on weekends, evening, and I start early in the morning with that. So what are your recipes to really educate yourself, be more resistant, and actually accept when you start working and when you actually stop?
That's a great question.
Anything?
Yeah.
And I kind of wish I had taken notes for the past 2 years now to give you something more concrete. All right, this is a half answer in the sense that it's not something tangible, right? And I think a lot of the really good, juicy work and impactful work is not tangible stuff. Everything changed for me in that it became infinitely easier for me to put these boundaries up, to not look at my phone, to take the apps off of my phone, to like just shut off when I started the process of detaching my identity from achievement, from work, from pats on the back at work. And the thing that personally for me helped me was, you're all going to laugh because it took me like 38 years to realize this, but finally understanding a fundamental part of the systems that we live in, which is, hold on, I am doing all of this for my shitty ass salary. All of these people on top of me get a lot more money. So I am killing myself. I am, my labor is creating wealth for this organization, and I gain that wealth, and I have no say in how that wealth is user distributed. For me personally, when I came to that realization, and it took me 38 years to get there, I laid in bed for 2 hours staring at the ceiling. And in those 2 hours, something shifted for me where it was like, I don't want to do this anymore. right? And what kind of like maybe a more tangible thing I can connect that with is to this idea of balcony and the dance floor. So when we are, and it's a metaphor for me, for a lot of things, for leadership, for life in general, when we are constantly doing, most of us are in doing, production, achievement mode, we're on the dance floor. So imagine you're in a big club, you're dancing on the floor, you're surrounded by hundreds of people, the music, all you can focus on is what's immediately in front of you, right? The few people around you, the music, you're all just trying to dance in tune with the music, trying not to step on people's feet, trying not to spill your drinks on other people, trying not to have other people spill your drinks on them. When you're there, your perspective is very limited. But when you leave the dance floor, you go up the stairs, you get to the balcony, then you see everything, right? You see how the entire club is laid out. You see the systems at play. You see the ecosystem. You see the architecture. You see the floor planning. You see how the bar is really close to the dance floor. That's why everything is spilling. Music is maybe not in the best place, and that's why people aren't hearing it so well. You start to see how things kind of work with each other. You see the bigger picture. So one of the things that helps me a lot is to almost mentally get on the balcony. And that means putting space and time in my calendar to just reflect at work, during working hours, right? And accepting that thinking is part of my job as much as doing is part of my job.
Exactly.
Yes.
And for me, honestly, like that thinking comes in the shower. So like I will put shower time in my calendar from, between 10 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon during my working hours, because that's when I think the best. Shower and taking a walk. And when I do those things, that's what helps me kind of like, it's really like a smack in the head to be like, get the hell out of this constant doing. Because when you're in the constant doing, you can't see the bigger picture. And it just becomes this downward spiral of like checking the emails, responding to everything immediately, having to do this because somebody else needs it, sending this email because I haven't received this thing yet, instead of just taking a step back, getting on the balcony and being like, I actually don't need this right now. I don't need this thing in this exact moment. I won't need it for this amount of time. I can't move forward on this because of this other thing, and that's okay, right? And the benefit of that is also you start to see why you're in that constant do mode. You start to see where the problems are. So you can also start to find better ways of, making things work better. So that detaching myself, my identity from my accomplishments, from titles, from my job in general, from how many things I can tick off of my list, that was the first thing. And then the strategy I use on a weekly basis is getting on the balcony, scheduling time to think.
And may I ask, how do you handle situations when you are under time pressure, actually, and you're dealing with an impatient person? Because nowadays, unfortunately, it works like this. Someone sends an email, keeps looking back 5 minutes later, if it got a response already. If not, they try to call you, and then they send you again a message. I just tried to call you. Yes, my friends need the information. Thank you very much. So I'm not saying that this is happening on a daily basis, but you do recognize those wonderful pearls that you want to throw out of the window sometime. And unfortunately, it's you have to keep your contenance, if I may say it like this, because you know that this person is actually overstepping boundaries, and you have to take the time to respond. Yes, I did get your message. Unfortunately, I'm still waiting for a response, blah, blah, blah. Everyone knows the recipe. But the thing is, if these people are unfortunate in their choice of words, how do you keep the boundaries that it doesn't? Because it's difficult to detach from work, your identity. And so these words are so subjective that you actually let it in, and it's very hard to every time, like, you don't want to get to provide the image that you're a lazy person. Like Phyllis said, it's so easy that you have this stigma if the person answers still within 24 hours, but person says, I will respond as soon as I have an answer, not just to respond and decorate your mailbox. So how do you in brackets educate your client? Because if you keep answering the
Exactly.
same sentence, they will ignore it and they will continue. So is there a way to communicate in a direct, polite way that they are actually overstepping a boundary? I'm not talking about the first email. I'm talking about someone that really has the bad habit.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any solution that you would recommend here?
So, I mean, there's many things involved in this. So if it's, well, one, from the beginning with my clients,
Yes.
I tell them these are my working hours and I have very strong boundaries around them. So to set expectations from the beginning and saying, just to, prevent as much frustration as possible, know that I will respond during these times. I will keep you updated as much as is reasonable. But out of these hours, I will be off. So really, those expectations clear from the beginning. And then if you haven't, then just having a conversation with that person for me has helped to be like, hey, just so you know, moving forward, I'm going to be responding at this and this time. I will make sure you always have the information that you need as soon as it comes to me. So if I haven't communicated anything to you, it's because there is nothing to communicate. But know that I'm working in the background to get it done.
I love that you just said there is nothing to communicate. That is something that I will try.
Yeah. And if I have a decent relationship with them, I will also just like for a cup of coffee and be like, hey, is everything okay? Because a lot of times that behavior is coming because they're getting pressure from something, right? They have somebody down their neck and they're possibly not in the best place possible. So compassion goes a long way as well. And just having that, if you have that relationship and you feel comfortable enough and safe enough to be like, hey, you seemed a bit kind of with this project and I wanted to check in. How are things on your end? How are you feeling? What's going on?
Okay. That is when you have to do, when you're dealing with a human that knows, that has social skills. So there are
but everyone's got feelings. Oh, absolutely. But everyone's got feelings. But everyone's still human at the end of the day, even if they want to deny their humanity, right? And in my experience, most people are, not everyone, like I think of my partner, he'd freak out if someone asked him that. Like, mind your own fucking, and that's okay, right? That's also okay. But in my experience, most people would just be kind of taken aback and be like, oh, thank you for asking me that. Like, no one's asked me that before.
Good point. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And kind of one last thing I'll say about boundaries in general is we have to remember power dynamics, right? Every conversation, power is this hidden, like this invisible factor that impacts all of us and that most of us forget to take into consideration. So if we are on equal power footing, it's going to be a different kind of tone and different conversation. If we are in a position of up power, where we have more formal power than the person we're speaking to, there's a duty and responsibility in how we are role modeling and what we're saying. But if it's reverse, if we're speaking from a down power position, there's going to be fear, anxiety. There's more at stake. There's more to lose when you're in a down power position, when speaking to someone who has more formal power than you do. So it's just keeping those things in mind and realizing that power is always in the room in these conversations, no matter what.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wrote everything down. Thank you very much.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Incredible. Thank you so much for that question. Thank you so much, Shiva, for sharing such actionable, I think, and really practical things that people can keep in mind, right? And recognizing, like you said, that we do live within a world that has different levels and layers, and that's something that we also might need to consider. Yes. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, I think I saw someone else had their hand up before,
Yeah,
but
I
then took
did,
it
and
down,
I
but I don't
lost
remember
them.
who.
Please raise your hand. We'd love to bring you on stage for you to share your perspective, or if you have a question that Shiva can answer. She honestly is the boundaries human. I mean, incredible. Incredible. Okay. I don't see anyone's hand up right now, but I do have more questions for you, Shiva. We have a bit more time that I can take advantage of. So we sort of talked a little bit about this before, and I know your answer, but I think it'd be interesting to just maybe continue that conversation on, like, do we need to go above and beyond to get a paycheck, right? So you talked a bit about, like, looking at your job description and doing that, right? That's considered quiet quitting, because the expectation is that you're meant to go above and beyond. So what should people keep in mind if there is a conversation about needing to go above and beyond to just get paid?
Oh my God. For me, it's like, if you expect me to go above and beyond, put that in the freaking job description to begin with.
Okay.
Tell me what that is.
Yes.
Don't even put above and beyond.
It needs
Make it clear.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Because otherwise it really feels like manipulation. It feels like extraction and exploitation. Should we go above and beyond to get a paycheck? For me, no. Why should we is really the question. I mean, the fear is always we're going to lose our job. And when I work with leaders, like, the boundaries comes up a lot in our conversations, a lot. And like this, I find this really freaking fascinating, by the way. Another tangent. The folks I work with are senior leaders in banking, in healthcare, in tech, in manufacturing. All of them are suffering. All of them want to put boundaries. All of them are terrified of putting boundaries. And when you get down to it, when you do the coaching, it's always like, I lose my job and I won't be able to take care of my family. And it's like, how well do you think you're taking care of your family when you're working 12 hours a day?
Yes.
Is money the only way that you can take care of the people you love? It is not, right? So that's my little tangent. But I recognize there is a reality in that we might lose our jobs if we're not getting in line with this BS concept of going above and beyond. But I don't see why we need to have an obligation for that. Why should my loyalty be only to an organization? I should have the choice to go above and beyond if I feel the organization is really doing something to also support me. I will go above and beyond where there's profit sharing and power sharing, where everyone's voice is actually pulled into a conversation, where all of the wealth that my labor creates, I have some say in how it's being used and distributed in the organization. Otherwise, why should I? Why should I go above and beyond? If it's just money, then screw that. I mean, honestly, I will find other ways to make money. And also, caveat here, privilege is a big part of this, right? Like, I realize that I have the privilege of doing that. And this is not something everyone can do, right? If I look at my parents and they never worked office jobs, they did back in our home country, but when we moved to the United States, they couldn't. They didn't have the luxury of, saying no, of putting boundaries. And I hate that it is a luxury. It shouldn't be a luxury.
Yeah. Once again, nodding my head. Always. Yeah. I always love what you have to share.
And once again, I don't. No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, just simply saying, just always, love what you have to share. If you're enjoying what she's sharing, please make sure you react with an emoji. But I just feel like everyone here is just like, yes.
I think we have Michelle also.
Yes, Michelle, please.
Hello, how are you doing?
Hello.
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I was thrilled to see this pop up this morning as I'm going. I reached out to you a while ago, Akua, about what I've been doing an experiment for the last few years and some executive leadership, like incrementally. And this is so on point. I'm literally in a sauna today, mapping out the life rhythms of everyone in the company. Like, how many days before the kid's birthday do we need to have days off, guys? Like,
That's
really,
amazing.
literally building it in using our project management software.
Love that.
Because it talks to it creates a Google Calendar. So let's make life rhythms, right? We need to be refilled. So I'm just thrilled with what I'm hearing, and I wanted to ask a question because Shiva, I love the way that you're stating boundaries and also acknowledging the privilege, right? I'm in a position now where I'm able to be a decision maker, a shot caller, etc., right? And so I have been somebody who's worked in education. I've got thousands of formers who are looking for an in at different times. And I am not from a family that was college educated, corporate background, that sort of thing. So I know that my career success has very much been about people inviting me in to mentor me or allow me to have access to a room that I might not really actually be ready to be in yet. And in my own career, I appreciated the opportunity. Like I looked at it like, okay, I don't have a child right now. I want to spend these years learning everything I can. So I was taking on extra time for free a lot, but it quickly produced results in terms of my career. And so I've always been careful to like leave the door open for if somebody wants to do that. And I'm experimenting now with building in a concrete, like intentional pathway and method for bringing somebody in and allowing them into spaces where it's like, this is outside of your, job description or pay grade or whatever. But if you want to come and be a part of this as a reach, your rate, and then on that, because I'm doing it intentionally with integrity, but at the same time, I know that I live my life with a lot of self-agency. And I'm aware that sometimes that's not the case with everybody. People grow into that more. So I wanted to just hear, like, from your perspective, given how all of this functions, the way you speak to power, that is a very real dynamic. I would love to hear if you have any, like, off the, off the cuff, just like SWOT analysis of a scenario like this. To give you a concrete example, I had like somebody as an intern last year, for instance, and I knew that I do my interviewing in the onboarding, so I'm really clear on what their career aspirations are. And so I'm speaking with her. She was having a really hard time getting traction, having the opportunity to do project management. So what did I do? I immediately put her into a project management scenario, had her support it until she had the skill to own it. Then I had her own an independent project, etc. And then we just padded her resume with experience, and within a year she was in a total job making twice her rate. So that's what I like to do, almost like use my company as an opportunity to do those kind of mentoring things. But I can see how it could be perceived as like you're paying this person less than the work they're doing. And so I've been very transparent about it. But as I was listening to you today, I paused for a minute. I was like, you know what? How might that be experienced if somebody's looking back on it and doesn't have that same outlook about life of driving their own pathway? Do you know what I mean?
I think so. But I'm also not sure. So the question comes around that they're not getting paid for as much work as they're doing, and how would they look back on that?
Yeah, it's not about quantity, it's about the actual value of the work. So like, for instance, the way I explain this to people is I'm like, look, your rate is determined by A, city, B, what do you know? What can you do? And then C, the soft skills to be in the room where you do those things. And so if somebody is, fresh out of college, for instance, they simply don't have the seasoning, the experience to hold certain responsibilities, but might have the skills. And so, as in, like, maybe they can do some kind of, high level tech skills or something. So with supervision, I could bring them into a certain capacity and give them that exposure to like how you get 150 an hour very quickly in their career. rather than having them 5 years to get there, something like that.
Mhm.
And so I'm really trying to structure it in such a way that they are experiencing how that valuation works so they can drive themselves into that place as an independent, freelancer. So I just wanted to share that and see if you have any thoughts about it, or if it just sounds different. I would just like to get your response to utilizing work in that way.
I mean, well, one, I think it's always great when we can use the power that we have, like the systemic formal power, to bring in other folks and to share power and to help other people move up and get a foot in the door and get into spaces that they normally wouldn't. For me, that's just part of ancestral leadership, right? Like it's a duty and a responsibility that we have for the community to bring in other folks. In terms of like how concretely that works. So like you said, someone straight out of work, straight out of university, they've got, whatever capacity, and they've got the soft, but maybe, and they've had maybe the technical skills, but they don't have the experience yet. Like, this is really also coming from my own filters, right? Like my own lenses. My first thing is, but maybe they have life experience, right? Like when I look at folks, when I'm hiring them, the best hire I ever did was an ex-student of mine. Ever. Above and beyond anybody else I had worked with. And he had incredible life experience, right? He had to, he was in survival mode for so long. He just knew how to get shit done. He had incredible empathy. I had to teach him have the boundaries for his own life. But that life experience was massive. And I haven't seen anything like that since him. No matter CVs I've looked at that have these like amazing work experiences, right? So it's maybe just taking a look at how, what kind of experiences are we valuing when we're getting people to come on board with us. But the concept itself, I personally love. I think health.
Okay. Okay, great. That's helpful because I 100% agree with you. What I'm actually doing is seeking out like that life experience that they don't even realize. These are strategic skills.
Yes.
In the workplace. This is what it looks like. It sounds like apply that thing that you just did there on the corner that you and I know you've been doing on the corner. Come in here and handle it. And I'm able to do that. And that is where I'm bringing my my past, educational experience. I'm finding this, utilize it in the context of work because like you said, these are some of the best hires ever. And is like exponential growth once they're like, oh, I just need to code switch it this way. And so it's really rewarding, but I'm also pausing with it because I'm like, I want to be sure that I'm setting this up in a way that is transparent on like how rates work, how, retainers work, how all these different things work. Basically, I want to provide a ladder to that balcony before maybe you were allowed up the staircase. So that view is there. And because that's what I find is the missing piece. Is that that's where the judgment lives, right? Is do you have the ability to just see from that balcony level quickly? And so that's what I'm trying to create ways to almost like scaffold or speed up the process of that view so that more people are not 38 when we have it, because I relate to that myself.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's one thing that came to mind when you're talking about the transparent. Also, I fully support being transparent about how much we make off of people. I work with a client who's phenomenal. He's a third party, so he gets clients and he brings me into projects and he will tell me like, I'm making this much money off of you. This is the exact percentages that I make from what you do and from like even the flights and the hotels and whatever. I'm like, I fucking love this. Thank you. I just appreciate knowing.
That's really validating because that is exactly what I'm leaning into. And I was encouraged yesterday not to do that by somebody that I'm having to do my projections. So I was like, that's the whole point is to teach what works. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for that question. I'm sure a lot of people in here benefited from you asking that question. Yeah, Melanie's like, yes. Great question. Great conversation. I know we're at time, so thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you so much, Melanie. Thank you so much, Phyllis, for your questions. And Shiva, as always, it's so much fun to have you around and active. I think maybe it'd be great to end with how people maybe can get in touch with you and also share your upcoming event with everyone as well, because I'm sure people would love to attend.
Good point. Thanks. I always forget to actually promote myself. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. I think that's the best way. My website sucks ass. I will not lie about it. It needs to find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect. I post regularly about what we've been talking about. And I've got 2 events coming up. So I've got one, I think this coming Thursday, or I suck at times, but if you follow me, you will know. It's called a Fire Starter, the Systems That We Live In. So it's a community conversation open to all identities to just start unpacking and understanding what is the system, what are some of the systems that we live in, how do they impact us, how do we start changing them. They're non-linear conversations. So it's basically, I spend the first 10 minutes just setting, intentions of how we're all going to show up, share a story, and everyone contributes and shares their concepts and their ideas. It's really just having a conversation in community. And the event is the Fireside. And this one is on ancestral wisdom. And it's traditionally open to BIPOC identities, but this one is one of the first ones I'm opening to all identities. Similar to the other event, it is just talking community, hanging out with folks that you don't know and probably would have never met otherwise, and having some amazing conversation around what are some of the ancestral wisdoms that we have gained from our families, from our communities. What responsibilities do we have as ancestors in the making? Who are the descendants we're surrounded by? So those are 2 events coming up in February. And if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll definitely see them on my feed.
Yes. So make sure you click Shiva's head, right? There's a little bubble there, 3 dots. Click on that, follow her event.
Click on my head.
As you can tell, yes, click on her head, her beautiful picture. Thank you so much, Shiva. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I know everyone here has really enjoyed it. We're here every Friday, so 3:30 GMT, which is my time. I think it's around 10:30 EST. So Eastern time in the US. Would love to see all of you next week. And if anyone wants to join me as a co-host, get in touch because I'd love to have you. Thank you all so very much once again for joining. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the reactions. And I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Friday and that you really take a break. Like you set a boundary and really take a break.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.